Hey, my friend, this is a request because if you have ever suffered loneliness, or if you do suffer loneliness, or if you know someone who suffered loneliness, well, I think you can help. You can help me to, make a change and try to help people who are suffering loneliness. So if that's something that you think you can make a difference with, please have a listen after this. Hey, welcome to the Personal Development Unplugged podcast with me, Paul Clough. And this is an FMQ, a 5-minute quickie podcast, which never lasts 5 minutes. It always goes a little bit longer. But it's a chance for you and I just to muse, to think of a subject, to talk about it for a few minutes, and then spend time thinking, seeing how it would change our life if we maybe developed it a little deeper. And maybe sometimes these 5-minute quickies will go into a longer podcast where we can dive deeper and produce processes, hypnosis processes, NLP processes. Don't worry about the names. They're just processes for making our life and your life absolutely better. Getting rid of anxiety, fear, all those other hang-ups and issues that we have, and have the life we deserve and make dreams come into reality. Quicker, bigger, better than you could ever dream of. But they're the longer podcasts, and this is a 5-minute quickie where we break down the complicated into simple. Because in simplicity there's genius, and that's what we do here. So if you want to just think for a little while, see what happens, see what resonates inside you, and when it does, you go change the world.
This is Personal Development Unplugged with Paul Clough.
In simplicity, there is genius.
In simplicity, there is genius.
Hey, my friends. This is a muse between, well, really myself, I guess. But it's a muse with you. Because, well, I'm wondering. You hear about loneliness. Loneliness is the real pandemic, epidemic, or whatever. But loneliness also leads to so many negative things and negative consequences, I think. And it affects people in so many different ways. And that's the bit I'm struggling with. Because I know I'm lonely occasionally, but it's not all the time, put it that way. It's not all the time, but I get lonely, and there's things that I need to do to break out of that loneliness because I can see the consequences of continuing it. But I guess I'm a bit lucky in that way, being able to see, hear, feel, imagine different ways. But also, I don't know the real feelings of deep loneliness. The loneliness that has horrible consequences to our lives and affects us in so many different ways. I say I need your help because I want to understand loneliness so we can muse and talk about it together. Come up with processes, thoughts, maybe visualizations, something that will help different forms of loneliness. Because obviously one size does not fit all. So if you have ever been lonely, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to hear about it if you were lonely and you got out of it. What did you do? How did you do it? Wouldn't it be great to share that with other people so they can model your process, adapt your process? But also I'd like to know how it affects you if you've suffered loneliness before or suffering loneliness. Because I think it's one of the most important things that we need to banish. Because we are, in our true nature, community people. Human beings need connections. relationships. Obviously a relationship with ourselves, and that, if you're lonely and you haven't got that connection, where do you go? Well, I'll tell you where you go. You come here and you talk about it and you pass on a message. How do you do that? Well, basically all I want you to do is email me, feedback@personaldevelopmentunplugged.com. And it's going to be anonymous, whatever happens. So just give me some bullet points. This is what I think triggers me. This is how I feel. This is how I want to feel, because I need to know how you do what you do. So how do you do loneliness? What, if you know, triggers loneliness? And how would you like to be? Because we need a direction. Because everyone, again, everyone is unique. We're all weird and we all have our needs. And I want you to have those needs met, if I can. So if you would, because if you think about it, I say if you would, if you think about it, what's the worst that could happen if you emailed me your thoughts, your experiences, your dreams, the effects? What's the worst that could happen? The worst that could happen is it would stay exactly the same, wouldn't it? So that's really a no-brainer, isn't it? But what if it just got a little bit better? Well, that's a plus, isn't it? What would happen if it got a little bit better than a little bit better? That's a plus, isn't it? What would happen if it disappeared? What would happen if you had relationships, connections? How would life change when that loneliness was to disappear? And I'm not just saying handle it, because we don't handle loneliness. We deal with it, but we want to live our lives with connection, relationships, and feeling joy in our lives, feeling happiness, feeling love, and the myriad of other wonderful positive emotions. So if this is something, I keep repeating myself now. If this is something you'd like to connect with, please do email me, feedback@personaldevelopmentunplugged.com. Or if you know somebody who seems a little bit distant, maybe just say, have you heard this podcast? I don't know, it might suit you, might not. If it doesn't, I'm just thinking of you, because that's a nice thing to do anyway. And then we'll muse together. We'll get our cup of coffee, our water, our wine, a little G&T maybe, a beer, cup of tea, and we'll muse. And we'll find a way. Thank you for your time. It's always a pleasure and I'm so grateful of it. But let's see if we can change the world, bit by bit. Anyway, time to fly, my friend.
Warning, you are now leaving the unplugged mind of Paul Clough. It's time to fly on your own. Be brave, my friend.
Personal Development Unplugged.